Well, I want to first of all thank you for the invitation to be here this afternoon. Wes Manson and the HG&E have been working on, if you will, a parallel track to the efforts of the task force relative to the site selection and site evaluation process for the project. If you're expecting, as the agenda called for, a primer on the typical approach to site selection and understanding the higher education consortium customer-centric role in Holyoke HPCC site selection process, in all honesty, relative to the colleges and universities review, I think that's a full semester course. I'm not going to be able to cover that in 20 minutes, so we'll give you no credit for the 20-minute version. Specifically, we're focused in on what has been determined to be and identified early in the process as an atypical process for site selection. And if I get this right, there we go. I wanted to expand on that a little bit. Specifically, as you see here, the things that have defined it as being atypical, obviously, are the complexity. As I mentioned at the start of this, where HG&E and Wes Manson and others are working on a parallel track to your efforts, the task force's efforts in developing the district. And we're working on the specifics of the project. As we've defined the project, it's a lot different than what Jim's described, because we're looking at physical parameters, size, scale, and those type of amenities, and use of obviously utilities and utility capacities and the like. So it's obviously the complexity of this project makes it atypical. I think in addition to that, we have the composition of the prospect. Again, this is really at this stage, you have to look at this as prospect management. We have a prospect, someone who is interested in building a project in the community, and this prospect was different from this prospect and others. It's difficult is the composition of the prospect. As you've heard, it's the universities coming together, if you will, having a common need, having a common schedule, and perhaps working towards a common budget for the project. But nevertheless, it's an evolving prospect. It's not someone who's just has a specific requirement and is self-serving. It's basically a positive group of consortium. The other major difference is the timing and disclosure of the prospect's interest. In a typical process, that disclosure would not be made until after the prospects had a chance to do the real estate evaluations, do the due diligence that's necessary to understand those characteristics of a slew of sites with respect to the site inventory, negotiate for the acquisition of the parcel, if you will, or control of the parcel. And then you find, obviously, at that point, the disclosure. Because of the importance of this project, because of the support for it, the advocacy for it, obviously, this makes that did not occur, it occurred already, and as a result, that makes it, if you will, atypical. The important part with respect to this is that from our experience, again, we're developers, we've been doing this for almost 30 years now, is at some point, and almost every point, you're going to find that the atypical approach has this propensity of attention to really evolve into a typical approach. And that's really driven, as we have here, by the need for flexibility. The prospect needs to have the flexibility because countless times, I'm sure Kathy and others who've worked with prospects will tell you, when they come in, they'll tell you that they're looking for a 30,000 square foot requirement, and when they finally build or they move into a requirement, it's only 15,000 square feet. There's an education process going on, an evolution that takes place if you will, goes on. So they need that flexibility. The need for information at this stage of the process, and that's, if you will, where we are, there's a desperate need for information regarding the sites, the inventory of the sites, the utilities, the geological efforts, the issues, and environmental as well, and obviously consideration of property owners' rights. That will force this process into a normalized process. And we're already seeing this, if you will, evolve before our eyes and as we work with the prospect. What's typical about what's happening now and what's happening with this process, if you will, is that the prospect is the decision maker. And that's important for all of us, certainly, who are associated with the project moving forward. The prospect is the one who's going to make the decisions to drive, they're the driving force behind this. And therefore, in this case, as you've heard and as you well know, prospect is the Higher Education Consortium. And that's a little bit involved as well. And clearly, they are the prospect. Being the driving force, they have dictated, as you see here, project requirements, specifically what they're looking for. But they also, and the key point here is the ability to modify those. As they go through the process, as they learn more about their needs, about the consortium and the interaction between colleges and universities and the private sector users, they need to be able to modify that. And that's how we end up, oftentimes we see ourselves where that 30,000 square foot need go out into something maybe as small as 15, it goes the other way and goes